The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I locked the front door of Riverside Family Medicine for what I thought would be the last time as the sole owner. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, my family would finally get what they'd been asking for, a piece of my life's work. But tonight, as I stood in the empty waiting room where I'd spent the last 15 years building something from nothing, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and this is the story of how my family's greed nearly destroyed everything I'd worked for, and how I learned that sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones most willing to take advantage of that love. It all started 3 months ago, during what was supposed to be a celebration dinner for my 42nd birthday. Mom had insisted on hosting at her house, the same house where I'd grown up, where my medical school acceptance letter had been taped to the refrigerator for years, where my parents had proudly displayed my diploma next to my brother Danny's business degree and my sister Lisa's marketing certificate. "Sarah's clinic is doing so well," Mom announced as she carved the roast, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she was building up to something. 15 years, and look how successful it's become. I should have seen the warning signs then. The way Danny's eyes lit up with dollar signs. The way Lisa suddenly became interested in my patient load statistics. The way Dad nodded approvingly while calculating something in his head. "It really is impressive," Danny said, leaning back in his chair. "I've been thinking, with my business background and Lisa's marketing skills, we could really help you expand. Take it to the next level." Lisa nodded enthusiastically. "I've been researching healthcare marketing trends. There's so much potential you're not tapping into. Social media campaigns, wellness packages, cosmetic services." "I run a family medicine practice," I interrupted gently. "Not a wellness spa." "But that's where the money is," Danny insisted. "Look, Sarah, you're brilliant at the medical stuff, but business? That's not really your strong suit." No offense. I felt the familiar sting of being dismissed by my younger siblings, the same feeling I'd carried through childhood when they'd gang up on me during family game nights or argue that my studying was just an excuse to avoid chores. Dad cleared his throat. "What Danny and Lisa are suggesting makes sense, sweetheart. You've built something wonderful, but family businesses are stronger. We could make this a real legacy." "A legacy," I repeated slowly. "And what exactly would your roles be in this legacy?" "Well," Mom jumped in, "Danny could handle the business operations, billing, staffing, finances. Lisa could manage marketing and patient relations. Think of how much more you could focus on medicine if you didn't have to worry about all that other stuff." "And in return?" The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Danny spoke up. "We'd be partners, obviously. Equal partners. Family shares everything, right? Equal partners?" In the clinic I'd built from scratch, the clinic I'd funded with student loans that had taken me 12 years to pay off, the clinic I'd painted myself, staying up until 3 a.m. between shifts at the hospital, the clinic where I'd seen my first patient, delivered my first baby, held the hand of patients taking their last breaths. "I'll think about it," I said, "because that's what you say to family when they ask for something that makes your stomach clench with dread." But they didn't want me to think about it. Over the next few weeks, the campaign intensified. Danny started showing up at the clinic during lunch hours with casual suggestions about workflow improvements. Lisa began posting on social media about exciting changes coming to Riverside Family Medicine. Mom called daily with articles about successful family businesses. The pressure was relentless and suffocating. Every family gathering became a strategy session. Every phone call included a mention of their contributions to my success, how Dad had driven me to medical school interviews, how Mom had helped me study for the MCAT, how Danny had helped me move furniture when I first opened the practice. They spoke as if those small gestures of support somehow entitled them to ownership of my life's work. The breaking point came 6 weeks later. I arrived at the clinic early on a Monday morning to find Danny in my office, going through my financial records. "What are you doing?" I demanded. He looked up without a trace of shame. "Just getting familiar with the books. Lisa and I have been working on a business plan for the expansion, and we needed to see the current financial position." "You went through my private financial records without permission." "Sarah, come on, we're going to be partners. There shouldn't be secrets between partners." That's when it hit me. They weren't asking anymore. They'd already decided. In their minds, they were already owners of my clinic. My 15 years of sacrifice, struggle, and success had become their birthright. "Get out," I said quietly. "What?" "Get out of my office. Get out of my clinic. And don't come back unless you're sick and need a doctor." Danny's face flushed red. "You can't be serious. After everything we've offered to do for you? After all the ways we've supported you?" "Supported me?" The laugh that escaped my throat was bitter. "You've supported me the way vultures support a wounded animal, by circling and waiting for the right moment to feed." He stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "You'll regret this, Sarah. You can't do this alone forever, and when you come crawling back, asking for our help, don't expect the same generous terms." After he left, I sat in my office for a long time, staring at the diplomas on the wall, the photos of patients' babies I'd delivered, the thank you cards from families whose loved ones I'd cared for. Everything in that room represented something I'd earned, something I'd worked for, something I'd built with my own hands and heart. That's when I realized that this wasn't just about money or ownership. It was about respect. My family saw my success as something that belonged to them by virtue of shared DNA. They saw my achievements as family assets to be distributed, rather than individual accomplishments to be honored. And that's when I decided they needed to learn a lesson. The first part of my plan was simple: documentation. I gathered every piece of evidence showing that my clinic's success was entirely my own. Bank records proving I'd funded everything myself. Contracts showing I was the sole signatory. Employment records demonstrating that I'd been the only physician and administrator from day one. The second part was more complex. I needed to show them exactly what they'd be walking into if they actually tried to force their way into my business. I started by having my lawyer draft partnership agreements based on their demands: equal ownership, equal decision-making power, equal profit distribution. But I also included clauses they hadn't considered: equal liability for malpractice claims, equal responsibility for debt obligations, equal accountability for regulatory compliance. Then I prepared a detailed financial breakdown of what equal partnership would actually mean. Not just the profits they salivated over, but the $200,000 in equipment loans still being paid off, the $150,000 line of credit for operational expenses, the liability insurance premiums, the continuing education requirements, the potential lawsuit exposures. I calculated that equal partnership would require each of them to invest $180,000 upfront and assume personal liability for over $400,000 in potential claims and debts. The third part of my plan required patience. I waited for them to make their move. It came 3 weeks later in the form of a family intervention. Mom called and insisted I come to dinner because we need to talk as a family. When I arrived, I found not just my parents and siblings, but also my Uncle Robert, who worked in commercial real estate, and family friend Janet, who was an accountant. They'd assembled a tribunal. "Sarah," Dad began, his voice carrying the authority he'd used when I was a child. "We've been talking, And we think you're making a mistake. This family has always supported each other, and we don't understand why you're suddenly being so selfish. Selfish. The word hung in the air like a slap. We've worked out a proposal, Lisa said, sliding a folder across the table. It's fair to everyone. I opened the folder to find a partnership agreement that was even more generous to them than their original demand. They wanted 60% ownership between the three of them, leaving me with 40% of my own clinic. In return, they would contribute their expertise and connections, but no financial investment. This is insulting, I said. Uncle Robert leaned forward. Sarah, honey, family is everything. Money comes and goes, but family is forever. Your parents sacrificed a lot to help you become a doctor. Don't you think you owe them something? I owe them gratitude, which I've given. I owe them love, which I've given. I don't owe them my life's work. But think about what we could build together, Danny pressed. Think about the legacy we could create. That's when I realized they still didn't understand what they were asking for. They saw only the success, not the struggle. They wanted the rewards without the risks, the profits without the pain. So I gave them exactly what they'd asked for. You're right, I said, closing the folder. Family should share everything. So let's share everything. I pulled out my own folder, the one I'd been preparing for weeks. This is the real partnership agreement, I announced. Equal shares, just like you wanted. Danny, your equal share of startup costs that need to be paid retroactively comes to $180,000. Lisa, same for you. Mom and Dad, I assume you want in too? That's another $360,000. The room fell silent. And of course, as equal partners, you'll each need to carry malpractice insurance. That's $45,000 per year, per person, minimum, and you'll be personally liable for any legal claims against the practice. Our current potential exposure is about $2.3 million across various cases. Danny's face had gone pale. Wait, we'd be liable for malpractice suits? But we're not doctors. Partners share all liabilities, I explained pleasantly. That's what partnership means. Equal responsibility for all debts, obligations, and legal exposures. Oh, and since you'll be making medical business decisions as equal partners, you'll need to complete continuing education courses on healthcare regulations. The state requires 40 hours per year, minimum. Lisa was frantically flipping through the pages. This says we'd have to work a minimum of 50 hours per week. Healthcare is demanding, I said. I've been working 60-hour weeks for 15 years. I assumed you'd want to pull your weight. Uncle Robert was studying the liability sections with growing alarm. Sarah, this level of financial exposure, it could bankrupt someone? Yes, I agreed. It could. It nearly bankrupted me twice in the early years. But that's what building a business means. Risking everything for the possibility of success. Mom's voice was small when she spoke. We didn't realize. We thought it was just about sharing the profits. That's the problem, I said, standing up. You only wanted to share the benefits. You never considered sharing the risks, the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, or the crushing weight of responsibility. Dad cleared his throat. Now, Sarah, I think you're being a bit dramatic. Dramatic? I turned to face him. Dad, last month I had to personally guarantee a $100,000 loan to upgrade our electronic record system. If the practice fails, I lose my house. That's not dramatic. That's reality. The room was silent except for the ticking of Mom's antique clock. This is what you've been asking for, I continued. True equal partnership. Equal investment, equal risk, equal responsibility. Are you ready to sign? One by one, I watched the greed drain from their faces, replaced by the dawning realization of what business ownership actually meant. Danny, who'd been so eager to handle the finances, balked at the idea of personal financial liability. Lisa, who'd wanted to revolutionize my marketing, hadn't considered that healthcare marketing is heavily regulated and requires specialized knowledge. Mom and Dad, who'd spoken so passionately about family legacy, suddenly seemed less enthusiastic about risking their retirement savings. "Maybe we need to think about this more," Danny said finally. "Take all the time you need," I replied. "But understand that this is what partnership looks like. It's not just about taking a share of someone else's success. It's about building something together from the ground up, sharing both the failures and the victories." I left the partnership agreements on the table and walked out. Over the next few days, reality set in. Lisa called first, apologizing and admitting she'd never understood the complexity of running a medical practice. Danny took longer, but eventually acknowledged that he'd been thinking like someone who wanted to buy into a proven success, rather than someone willing to build something from scratch. The hardest conversation was with my parents. Mom cried, apologizing for pushing so hard. Dad, stubborn as always, took longer to come around, but eventually admitted they'd been unfair. "We just wanted to be part of your success," Mom said during our heart-to-heart conversation the following week. "We're so proud of you, but sometimes we feel left out." I understood then that their greed had grown from a place of love, albeit misguided love. They wanted to feel important in my success story, to be more than just cheerleaders on the sidelines. "You are part of my success," I told them. "Every patient I treat with compassion, I learned that from you. Every time I work late to help someone in need, that's the work ethic you instilled in me. You don't need to own my business to be part of my story." The resolution wasn't immediate or perfect. Family dynamics don't heal overnight. But gradually, things improved. Danny started his own consulting business, using his skills to help other small business owners instead of trying to piggyback on mine. Lisa found work with a healthcare marketing firm where she could learn the industry properly before maybe, someday, working together on a project. Most importantly, my family learned to see my clinic as my individual achievement rather than a family asset to be divided. They learned to support my success without trying to own it. 6 months later, I did expand the practice, but on my terms. I brought in a junior partner, Dr. James Martinez, a brilliant young physician who invested his own money, shares the risks, and works as hard as I do. We built something together, as equals, based on mutual respect and shared sacrifice. My family celebrated the expansion at a dinner that felt different from all the others. There was pride in their voices when they talked about my success, but no longer any entitlement. They asked questions about the new partnership with genuine curiosity rather than calculation. Danny, who'd been working on building his own business, raised his glass for a toast. "To Sarah," he said, "who taught us the difference between earning success and inheriting it." As I looked around the table at my family, flawed, human, and finally understanding, I realized that the real lesson hadn't been about business or money. It had been about respect. They'd learned to respect the magnitude of what I'd built, and I'd learned to respect their need to feel valued without giving away what I'd earned. The clinic continues to thrive. My partnership with James is everything a professional relationship should be, built on mutual investment, shared risks, and complementary skills. We're planning to open a second location next year, and this time, it truly will be a shared venture from the ground up. Sometimes, the best way to teach someone the value of what you have is to show them exactly what it would cost them to earn it themselves. My family learned that success isn't something you inherit or demand. It's something you build. One difficult decision, one sleepless night, one satisfied patient at a time. And sometimes, the people who love you need to learn to love your success without trying to own it. Real support means celebrating someone's achievements, not calculating how you can benefit from them. I still work long hours, still carry the weight of responsibility for every patient who walks through my doors, still lose sleep over difficult cases. But now, when my family asks how the clinic is doing, I hear genuine pride in their voices instead of hidden calculations. That makes all the difference in the world. The fluorescent lights still hum overhead as I lock the front door each night, but now they sound less like a burden and more like the steady heartbeat of something I built, something I earned, something that belongs to me. Not because I was born into the right family, but because I had the courage to dream it, the determination to build it, and the strength to protect it when protecting it mattered most. Sometimes the greatest act of love is teaching the people you care about that love doesn't entitle them to take what you've earned. And sometimes the people who truly love you will thank you for teaching them that lesson, even when it's painful to learn.